Part 2. The return to the House of Eternal Echoes. Years had passed since the last unfortunate souls ventured into the House of Eternal Echoes. The legend of the Halloway Mansion had faded into whispered tales, but the house stood as an enduring sentinel of dread. Its once grand exterior was now even more shrouded in ivy and decay, casting long, ominous shadows in the moonlight. In a nearby town, a historian named Alexander Crane had always been intrigued by the stories of the mansion. Unlike most, he wasn't drawn by mere curiosity or a thirst for adventure. He was driven by a personal connection. His great-grandfather, Elias Crane, had been one of the early investigators who vanished within the house's walls. Determined to uncover the truth and find any trace of his ancestor, Alexander set out to explore the mansion armed with nothing but a lantern, a notebook, and an unshakable resolve. The unveiling of hidden secrets as Alexander stepped into the mansion's dilapidated floor. He was immediately struck by a sense of heavy stillness. Dust motes danced in the dim light of his lantern, and the air was thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. He could almost hear the faint whispers of the past echoing through the hallways. Alexander began his exploration methodically, mapping out each room and documenting the strange phenomena he encountered. In the library, he discovered an old diary belonging to Evelyn Halloway filled with cryptic entries and illustrations of arcane symbols. One passage caught his attention. The ritual nears completion. We seek to transcend beyond this mortal coil, to commune with the ancient ones who dwell in the void. The house, it speaks to us, guiding us to the threshold of eternity. In the cellar, Alexander stumbled upon a concealed door, hidden behind a stack of rotting crates. With great effort, he pried the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward into a subterranean chamber. The walls were adorned with murals depicting the Halloway family's dark rituals, and an altar stood at the center, covered in dust and cobwebs. The awakening as Alexander approached the altar, he felt a sudden surge of energy, a presence that seemed to awaken from the depths of the mansion. The air grew colder, and the whispers intensified, forming a cacophony of ghostly voices. Alexander's lantern flickered and then went out, plunging him into darkness. He fumbled for his flashlight, and as its beam cut through the darkness, he saw them spectral figures, the translucent forms of Samuel, Eliza, Evelyn, and Edgar Halloway. They moved in a slow, ethereal dance, repeating the motions of their final ritual. Their eyes were vacant, and their expressions were locked in an eternal trance. Alexander's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the ghostly reenactment. The room seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. But he was determined to uncover the truth. He raised his flashlight and called out, "Evelyn, Edgar, can you hear me?" To his astonishment, the ghostly figures paused, their heads turning slowly to face him. Evelyn's spectral form floated closer, her eyes locking onto his. She spoke in a voice that was both distant and hauntingly clear. "You should not be here. The house hungers for souls. It will consume you, as it did us." A desperate escape. Realizing the danger he was in, Alexander knew he had to leave the mansion before it claimed him as its next victim. He turned and ran, his footsteps echoing through the labyrinthine corridors. The whispers followed him, growing louder and more insistent, urging him to stay. As he reached the foyer, the front door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Desperation surged through him, and he threw himself against the door. But it held firm. The house seemed to tighten its grip, the walls closing in around him. In a final, frantic bid for freedom, Alexander remembered the diary he had found. He pulled it from his bag, frantically flipping through the pages. He found a passage that described the counter-ritual, a way to break the mansion's hold. With trembling hands, he recited the incantation, hoping against hope that it would work. The mansion trembled, the walls vibrating with an unearthly resonance. The ghostly figures of the Halloway family screamed in anguish, their forms dissolving into wisps of mist. The front door flew open, and a blinding light flooded the foyer. The aftermath.